So there we go. Hi, Lucy. So how have you been, I guess, first of all, how have you been doing, this last 18 months with the whole COVID thing?
It was a funny time, really, wasn't it, for everybody?
Mhm.
There was some good things about it, in as much as that we spent a lot of time together as a family. My husband, who works really hard, is often not at home, so it was great for him to be at home, albeit he was down the end of the garden in a shed, having to
Right.
work remotely in that way. But it's, that was a nice thing about it, and the fact we were just kind of uh, just homebound, and we couldn't do anything else, and it was just kind of regrouping, really, and we were having to talk to each other as opposed to kind of going off and do different things, and filling your life with other stuff. So
Mhm.
in that respect, we took the positives out of it. On another respect, homeschooling was revolting.
Yeah.
It was nearly the death of me. It was just interesting on lots of different levels, really. I learned a lot about mathematical equations that I never really thought I
Oh,
knew, but I didn't know, and lots of English bits, and so that was interesting. But as I say, it was tough. It
yeah.
was a tough time.
So were your kids kind of the secondary school age that were affected?
Well,
Right.
my youngest is 10 now, so she was just turning 9
Right.
when it hit. So I was schooling her, really.
Right.
My eldest daughter was 13, so she was kind of pretty self-sufficient. I mean, I couldn't have helped her out anyway. I'd be useless at her level of work. But
Yeah.
it was, yeah. So I was mostly homeschooling her.
Yeah. So is that like quite, I guess, did they miss quite a big part of their school life, like in terms of like going into New Year's and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what they missed more than anything else was the social interaction.
Yeah.
And I noticed that, we moan about them about being online so much and using their iPads, but that was the only way the kids were talking to each other,
Mhm.
and that was the only way they were able to still carry on with their relationships with their friends. So, we were having to just kind of, it was very difficult to monitor their time on computers at that point, because their lessons were virtual, their interaction with their peers was virtual. So the biggest thing was that physical social interaction that I think they missed out on. Our school was really quite good, in as much as they had 2 Zoom lessons a day, and then we had to fill in the rest ourselves. They'd set lessons, but we would have to oversee them at home. So I kind of felt more the stuff they missed in the playground, the
Yeah.
stuff that my eldest daughter would have missed in the canteen.
Mhm.
It was that, really, I felt that they missed out on, just meeting up with your mates in the park, or it was that more. And I felt, and I did feel for them in that respect. And you had to kind of give them a bit of a break when it came to that. But it was very tough being teacher, being mum, being wife, and then trying to still try and get a semblance of a job, keeping money coming in myself as well at the same time. Especially, I mean, when I was trying to reprimand the kids, it'd be like, well, are you the teacher now, or are you the mum? Because
Yeah.
we're not really listening to you
Yeah.
with either of it. Yeah, so, but we've come out the other side,
Mhm.
basically, and we're all in one piece, touch wood, and scarred slightly as a result of it. We've got war wounds, I suppose, like everybody has, but we didn't, we were so fortunate we didn't lose anybody during that time. And my mum's late 70s, my husband's mum's mid 70s, and we were really aware of keeping them safe and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
We were sticklers for the rules, really, so we were good in
Yeah.
that respect.
That's good. Do you think a lot of it as well, you have to be careful what you let into your sort of world, in terms of like the news and stuff? Because there was just, especially in 2020, there was just so much crap happening at the same time in terms of COVID lockdown. We had, Brexit was happening. You had like Donald Trump be doing his thing, and there was like the death of George Floyd. There was this, lots of things going on at the same time, and I think the more we were kind of stuck in lockdown and like having to watch the news for updates to find out what was going on,
Yeah.
the more it would be crap, because you just realizing how much stuff was going on.
Yeah, I think there was only so much crap, like you say, you could
Yeah.
take. But I think that the COVID news became almost addictive. That's what I felt, that we were kind of becoming like the briefings, the 5 o'clock briefings were, even my daughter was saying, come on, it's Bojo time, and you know, we became slightly obsessive about it, I think, and the daily figures we were obsessing over. But you know, it was a case of having to kind of monitor that as well in terms of the bad news that was hitting. I was very much aware of that about my you know, my 10-year-old. She was, you know, turning 9 at the time, about the impact that was having on, would be having on her life, really. You know, I felt that Bessie, my eldest, was old enough to kind of handle it. But I was very aware of there being too much bad news coming into the house. But as I say, I think as much as I became obsessed by it, it was something I think the children were living so much that I think they wanted to see what, you know, the new stuff when it came to COVID. So I was, you know, we would kind of turn it off a little bit after that. I didn't want too much negativity coming into the house. I mean, in my eyes, the kind of Brexit thing, we just kind of got rid of that, moved on, didn't want to hear it. We'd had so much of it that we kind of put that on the back burner a little bit. But I think because the kids were living with COVID so much in terms of their daily routine, about how it affected their lives, I think they had a vested interest, and they did seem to want to know daily about what was going on. Yeah, but they seemed to cope.
Yeah, and I guess coming out the other side of that, you're back in doing work. You were doing theatre, right? Panto season's back on.
And yeah, I mean, I hate to say that it's definitely happening. I'm always feel like I'm tempting fate. I'm too scared to say it. I mean, it is, and it's all signed and sealed, and everyone's advertising their pantos. But I just, you know, I think we've all learned a little bit about, you know, throwing caution to the wind. We've just got to be a bit careful, really. You know, can't wait to get my flu jab. I can't wait to get my booster jab. You know, I just want to make sure that it carries on, that, you know, normality is coming back into all our lives, and we can go back to work. I mean, it was lovely for me because I worked all over the summer back in the theatre as well, which was a different experience. Again, really, that was sold socially distanced, the show that we did in the summer. So the plan is to sell panto at full capacity. But I feel that if the minute I say, yeah, it's on, you know, the next thing the phone will ring and say, listen, you know. So I'm just, yes, it is on.
It is. Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's not behind me.
I mean, were you worried about theatres, I suppose, you know, when it was that, you know, back in sort of 2020, when we had no idea what the future was going to look like, especially I guess for the smaller regional theatres, you know?
Yeah, I was really worried about what was going to happen to theatres. You know, they struggle at the best of times, regional theatres, and pantomime is kind of their lifeblood. It's what keeps them going. It keeps the towns going. You know, you get a full house for panto, and you know, your Greggs down the road, your pawn shops in some of these poorer towns. You know, the things that keep them going are their pawn shops, their pound shops, their Greggs bakeries, their McDonald's, and you know, you don't have a panto, you've got a quiet high street. So the impact is huge, just on, you know, in local terms, but very, very worried about theatres closing. And I think some have gone by the wayside as a result of COVID. So it will be a joy to get back in to the theatre and just see a town alive again, you know, because some of these towns that pantos open up in, you know, they're very poor areas sometimes, and people save up a lot of money to go and see the show at Christmas, and it's something they look forward to. As I'm saying, it does generate money for the rest of the town during the year.
Yeah, and I think some kids, you know, struggle. I was at school not long ago, and I think the topic of panto came up, and this one kid had no idea. It was quite an oldish kid, like probably year 4, had no idea what pantomime was. He was just like, he asked me if it was in 3D. Yeah, had no idea what the concept of a pantomime. So it was just.
Where was he? Where was he from?
This was in Buckinghamshire. So yeah,
and then they do loads of pantos around there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They had just no concept.
He's probably going around with his head in his phone or in his iPad. You know, he's driving around in the back of his mum and dad's car and not even seeing the billboards for it or something. You know, that's what you worry about. Kids aren't even looking up from their phones. But,
oh yeah.
you know, that's the worry, isn't it, about kids, that they're everything. I mean, my kids don't even watch mainstream telly. I mean, everything is YouTube. Everything is, you know, online in terms of even their programming, really. So things are changing, but I know the first theatre thing I ever went to see, my grandma took me to see Jim Davidson as Buttons in Cinderella at Guildford, you know, and I still remember it now, coming away with a ballpoint pen as a souvenir, you know, and but it stayed with me, and I remember it vividly. And it is sometimes the first time kids get into the theatre. So you know, I'm really proud of panto. I'm not, you know, it gets me a bit cross when people are a bit snobby about it, but you know, it takes, not everybody can do it. It's not everyone thinks, oh, anyone can do panto. It's not. It's kind of, you know, it's a certain craft, and to do it well, you know, that's the most thing. I don't, you know, I really stand behind being good at your job, and engaging with the kids, and making a show good enough for the adults to want to come and see, where they don't sit there thinking, oh my God, this is the worst 2 hours of my life. You know, you want the adults to enjoy it as well. So it's about hitting the right note, and doing a good job, you know, because it might be the thing that gets kids, that grips them, and they think, A, I either want to do that myself, or B, I want to come and see something else that's going to be in this theatre, you know. Wow. And maybe just kind of, you know, getting the magic from it.
Yeah. Do you worry about, like, I guess, the social media aspect of the next generation as it gets a bit more older, because they're just more and more obsessed with, I feel like if you said to a teenager, you know, you could wake up tomorrow and you could be exceptionally talented at the piano or whatever you want to be at, or B, you could just wake up and have 1 million followers on Instagram for no particular reason, they'd all go, I'll have the 1 million followers on Instagram.
I mean, that is my fear. And, you know, I'm living with a 14-year-old that her head, I mean, she's a very busy 14-year-old. I mean, you know, and she has gone down, she does play the piano and she plays the drums, but it is a constant kind of thing. They're going, you know, you've got to please get your head out the phone. Please read a book. Please do your piano practice, please. Because I even though she's got these things behind her and things to do, I still think she would happily sit just head buried in the phone, on social media, just talking to her friends that way, as opposed to even going to meet them sometimes. And I worry that it does. I worry about the impact on their mental health. I worry that, I don't know, that it's just not a real world. So, but because it's not a world that I understand, I also think that, am I being a bit of a dinosaur? You know,
Yeah.
not being up on the times Mum get with the program, or am I over worrying, or am I just not up with the way things are now? It's a fine line, isn't it? And it's finding that balance as a parent as well. But you know, I'm not tech savvy, you know, hence the way you're today coming online to you. But you know, I'm not tech savvy, and there has to be an element of you trusting them, but I do, you know, sometimes if I see Bess upset, and I'll just say, please put the phone down. You might not think it's linked to that, but I think it might be linked to that. And then can you pick up a book and take your head somewhere else? And that's the worry, that we're losing the art of reading, and you know, as you know, the playing the piano. Albeit, you know, there is a piano right here behind my shoulder, and I just, you know, get on that piano. But they'll do what their peers do. They'll do what their friends do. You know.
Yeah.
Mum, you know, Mum, you're just old and you don't get it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the standard response, really.
Yeah. Well, it's not even the fact, like, you know, you sort of use it to sort of keep in contact with friends and stuff. It's just, it's so open, like anyone can follow anyone, and anyone can compare themselves to someone else's reality, you know, and think, well, that's where they are at my age, so why aren't I feeling like that, happy and successful in a minute? It's a worry, especially for like teenagers, I think.
No, I know. But it's something that's not going away, though, is it? I mean,
No.
that's here to stay. And it isn't about managing them, being able to decipher between what's real and what's not real. That's what they've now got to get the art of, is being able to decipher what's real, what's not real, being able to kind of laugh at some things and say, you know, I might follow that person, but I know it's not real, but I can compartmentalize that, because it's just not going away. And it's about trying to make them so savvy about all of it. And I don't know, I don't know if I'm the person to do that. I don't know. You know, it's a constant worry as a mum. It really is.
Yeah, it's just the comparing, I think, as well. It's just like, I mean, I can go on Instagram and be like 7 o'clock in the morning, you know, and you can see someone like The Rock up at 4 o'clock in the morning doing running and gym, and like he's done all that at the 4 o'clock, and I'm still in bed. You know, even with
Then I
someone
go,
like The Rock.
oh, or off. You know,
Yeah.
I really try and talk myself out of that and just go, oh, well, if that's what they want to do, get on with it. Fine.
Yeah.
Fine. I'll have a cup of tea. I'll have had 2 cups of tea by then.
Yeah. And last week we got to talk to Jack Ryder, who played Jamie
Oh,
Mitchell. Yeah.
Jack.
Yeah,
Love
in
Jack. Yeah.
EastEnders, and he was talking about you know, his time on EastEnders and
Yeah.
the sort of craziness of it all. And he was sort of, I didn't realize how, you know, how much that kind of stardom in EastEnders was. How, you know, in terms of, he was saying he can go to like a shop in to get trainers or something, they'd have to close the shop down, and he just said it was a bit. He got to a point
Yeah.
where he had a bit enough of it.
Yeah, he was almost like pop star status though, Jack, when he came in the show. And I think EastEnders, the BBC at that point were equally as shocked by the reaction that Jack got when he first came into the show. I mean, he was a young boy. He was like, you know, pin-up status really for young girls at that point, and probably young boys as well. And I just think they weren't prepared for it. I don't think anybody was prepared for that level of instant fame. And I think Jack I don't think he'd kind of come from like a theatre school background, if I remember right.
Yeah, he said that. Yeah,
there was no training. There was no one there for him to go to. There was nobody. It just kind of came like a steam train. And you know, I'd kind of worked steadily along my way, and it was, you know, a slow burn for me. But Jack just hit the ground running, and I remember him really struggling actually with it, about that level of fame and how, you know, and the impact on his life at that time. And yeah, I know it was hard, very hard for him, very hard.
Yeah, I guess you think like, you know, I guess you sort of see it now on a different level with like the Love Island contestants and stuff like that. Like, and some of them come out. I mean, there's been some awful stories from Love Island, you know, in terms of mental health and the suicides that have happened. Do you think a lot of it is kind of being, like you say, steamrolled into that fame, and then suddenly they come out of it, you know, everyone wants to talk to them for a certain amount of time, but then the next season comes along and it's like they're back into who are you sort of territory again.
Well, you know, I was a theatre school trained girl, and it's not that they teach you how to deal with that in theatre school. It's just you know, you go through I also worked steadily professionally during my school years, and you know that it's a job. You kind of it's a slow burn. You know, you'll get. I worked on things. Some things hit big, some things, you know, didn't. But each one was a job for its own merits. And I think things like Love Island and people are just made famous, and that, you know, that you can be a doctor or, you know, completely plucked out of a relatively normal job compared to what we do, where they have no idea about fame and that side of the industry, that part of the industry. And I think it's a massive shock to the system. And I think you know, there's something to be said for spending those years training at theatre school and drama school, and appreciating that, you know, how what the job entails and the things that can sometimes come along with it. And I think if you've had no training for that, it just must hit you from out of nowhere. It must be very, very difficult to deal with. You know, even though I'd worked steadily up until I got EastEnders, and you know, I remember I handled it okay in terms of people, the attention that it got, but it didn't seem to be like the Love Island sort of thing. I mean, we were in the papers a lot, you know. It was the time of, you know, there weren't so many channels, and there weren't the phones taking photographs and things, and people being able to be in control of their own publicity. So, you know, there were all the magazines and things, and, you know, that was my most high profile job. So, you know, I had a degree of it, but I just think I'd steadily worked along up to it. And I didn't kind of buy into the whole self-importance thing about it, you know, because a lot of people can kind of go, oh, I am really that special. I'm really that big. I'm really that famous. I can really get tables here, and think that it's going to last forever. And they can kind of almost believe in their own hype. And I think that's, you know, there's only one way to go from up, and that's down. And that's I remember Toby Jones actually saying, sorry to name drop, but I do remember him when we were filming Detectorists one year, and he just said to me, well, there's only one place to go from famous, and that's not famous, you know. And that's a big drop. And I think you are kind of prepared for that if you go to drama school and college and theatre school, you know, that is in your psyche, that it's, you know, it might be great then, but it can also go, it can go that way, and it's, you know, and you just have to learn to live with that, and I suppose you are prepared for it, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I do worry about these kids that kind of just find a massive amount of fame very quickly, because it's only going to go one way and it hurts.
Yeah.
You know,
I was
dealing
gonna, yeah, I was gonna ask what it was like for you, I suppose, like when the sort of height of your EastEnders career, was it a bit mad? I mean, you were involved in one of the biggest EastEnders storylines, you know, ever in terms of who shot Phil. Well, you were the shooter, right? You were the shooter
yeah.
of, yeah, you shot Phil Mitchell. So I mean, what was, I guess, you know, was it ever sort of crazy, a bit mad for you, like going out and things?
Yeah, it was. You know, that you had the press camped outside the door, and you know, there'd be photographers following you, and I mean, that it kind of was, it was round about that time. But you know, if you were living in London as well, I mean, we, at the time I was filming that, I lived in Highbury in North London, and I remember there was Kathy Burke that was up the road. You had Elaine Lord around the corner, who also was on EastEnders at the time, playing Lynn Slater. There was me, you know, there was Steve McFadden down, you know, we were all North London based. So perhaps we'd just literally do a tour and just kind of hang outside your doors, just wait and see who they could get. And they, you know, more often than not, get probably all of us in one hit. But yeah, you know, with along with storylines comes that kind of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really ever get used to a camera being shoved in your face, I would say, but you do kind of, part of you just goes, you know, the show was very high profile at that time. You know, I think there was about 21 million viewers at, you know, the peak of that kind of storyline. The split share of the TV audience wasn't what it is now. You know, it was four or five channels, and that was a lot, really. And we were kind of told that it kind of came with the territory. And it was, you know, they were hanging out and they were hiding, and, you know, you go for a jog and, you know, you'd have perhaps just jumping out or whatever, but you got used to it a little bit, but you knew that it did come with the territory. And there was nothing like, there were no other jobs that entailed that sort of thing. It did seem to be soap stars at that point, back in the late 90s, early noughties, where it was soap stars that were kind of getting a hit a lot with it. So yeah, I mean, I've kind of gone through that a bit. It's not particularly pleasant, but you take it for what it is, really. You know, what else can you do?
Yeah, you're kind of grateful there wasn't Twitter and Instagram.
Oh my
then.
I mean, thank the Lord for small mercies, really. I mean,
Yeah.
I am, you know, I'm overjoyed that there were no camera phones, and it was just all kind of starting, I think, when I sort of left. So yes, I mean, it wasn't particularly nice. We just had newspapers that were hacking our telephones.
Well, oh yeah, true. Yeah.
That wasn't. I mean, I don't know which one I'd rather have had, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was a horrible side of it. There was definitely a dark side of the fame at that time.
Yeah. How do you even discover that someone's hacking your telephone? How do you sort of come about learning about that?
Police,
they informed you.
Yeah,
right.
police literally not. They phoned me up and they said, we need to come and see you. And I think the telephone, I think it was Orange Network at the time. They found it out, and then they contacted the police, and then the police. I literally had no idea. I had no idea.
Scary, isn't it?
No idea whatsoever. And then when you kind of uncover it, and you realize it was going on for 7 years and by 3 different newspapers. And when you know, I went to court, actually had my day in court, which I'm really pleased about. You know, they uncover that they've got receipts for private investigators, and that were also that the newspapers were employing just to tail you. You know, so you think you're seeing a pap, you know, and you go, oh, that's for Heat magazine, or that's for that, I would look dreadful. But little do you know, there's also private investigators following you. So that was dark. I mean, when that all came out, but it was the police that let me know, and then they turned up and interviewed me, and then it went from there, really. And then it's just snowballed.
Yeah. And like, great. Just, I mean, how did you feel like you say, when you discover like 7 years of it, and I guess, did you sort of add things up as well? Like, oh, that's how they got that information, and it all started to kind of make sense?
Absolutely. That's exactly what it was. Just things started to make sense that didn't make sense for a long time, you know, and I was accusing people of selling stories, and that people that were close to you, or, you know, phoning up newspapers and telling them things, not necessarily for money even sometimes. I just assumed that people got a kick out of reporting stuff, and, you know, and it did have a detrimental effect. And then, you know, I ended up being quite paranoid, you know, scared to speak. And then I thought, you know, then I was blaming myself, thinking, it's me, I must be going out and talking really loudly to people about private stuff, and people must just be overhearing. So, you know, all these things were going through your mind. And then so the relief was that A, you weren't mad, and B, you weren't to blame, and C, neither were your family and friends. So that was the best thing to have come out of it, really. And just tying up all those kind of loose ends and just going, that was that, and that was that. No wonder, you know. And then kind of eventually being cross going, well, because of that ended in that, you know. And but it making perfect sense, you know, as to what was going on. Made perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's just crazy. Can't imagine it. Just like
crazy.
Crazy.
That was even thought up, you know, that it was get awayable with for such a long time, and how many people that were victims of it. That's what's incredible as well. Incredible. I mean, it's still going on now. People, not the phone hacking, but people now being contacted saying, your number has come, you know, they're still investigating it now, and people are finding out now that they were phone hacked, you know, only just now. It's incredible.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean, like I said, we talked about the really big storyline you're involved in, who shot Phil Mitchell. I mean, what was all, I remember being at school and just, you know, everyone was talking about at school who you think it is and everything. I mean, what was that whole storyline like being involved? And I mean, guess when did you find out that you were the shooter? Was it something that you had to keep private for a long time? Did you know for a long time, or?
Yeah, I kind of can't remember the exact kind of time frame of things, but I think we started shooting the actual kind of storyline. I think I'm trying to think I think Phil was shot. The scenes of Phil being shot were filmed, but nobody. And then there was a bunch of us that knew that we were suspects, if I remember rightly. I mean, it's such a long time ago now. There was a bunch of us that were told that we were all suspects, and, you know, and none of us were going to be told at that point which one of us it was. And we kind of thought, maybe because they don't know who it is yet. So we were all just kind of playing that it could have been us. And then I think after a few weeks of that kind of happening, then we were all brought up one at a time to see the John York, who was exec producer at the time, to be told which of us it was or wasn't. And everyone apart from me was told that it wasn't them and it was me, but I was also then to go downstairs and say to them it wasn't me. So I had to carry on this lie, which was just, I mean, it's genius really, but at the time I was thinking, this is ridiculous. I'm talking to my work colleagues and I'm having to lie to my work colleagues. And so we were all sitting there saying, well, if it's not you and it's not me, someone's lying here. Right. Or maybe it's just someone there's something completely random that's not been included in this at all. So, and I had to run with that for quite some time. I think for about 6 weeks I had to run with that.
Wow.
And then we filmed the scenes of the reveal of who shot Phil separately, and, you know, in a separate studio, so nobody got wind of it, with a very limited crew. But I think that was a success of the storyline, really, in the fact that they managed to keep it so secret, because things get leaked, and, you know, be it from the press office or whatever, you know, deliberately or unintentionally, things get leaked. But I think the success of that storyline was the fact that they managed to keep it secret for such a long time, and the viewers didn't find out literally until the episode of the reveal. Yeah. And so that was thrilling. I mean, it was glorious to be picked, that it was, you know, it was my character, and then to have kind of pulled the wool over everybody's eyes. It was quite good, really, as well.
Yeah, no, I can even remember, like, just before the reveal, you know, I remember, like, there was all those knocks on the doors. There was like a knock on the door, wasn't there, for different characters? Right. Yeah, and then it was like showing like the suspects that it'd be someone completely, he would, like Gary, you know, there's a knock on his door. Like, no, why is Gary involved? Yeah. But there's like all these knocks on the door, and, you know, I can remember that, and being a kid just being like, oh wait, we don't know who it is. It's got to wait another day to find out.
And I don't think people thought it would be Lisa, because I think they'd always thought she was a bit too wet to do it, and she just cried too much, and it couldn't be her, you know. But I think she had the biggest motive to do it, really. Yeah. You know, he'd emotionally bullied her and abused her for years. So I think it was smart.
Yeah. And so how long was like your break from EastEnders when you left and then you returned? You had quite a big several years out, wasn't it?
Well, first time I think I left the first time in 2003 after doing nearly 5 years, something like that. And then I went away for quite a few years and came back. I think I just did a one-ep appearance with Louise. I can't remember if I was kidnapping her again or if I was bringing her back. I can't remember.
Right.
But then I went back. Then there was another big gap, and I went back again. Then I think Louise was an older, was 19 or something, and I think she'd been burnt at a school prom. And I think I turned up again. I did about 2 weeks there, and Lisa had got these psychological problems and mental health issues. So I played that kind of storyline. Then I went away again for about 3 more years. And then I think 2019, just before we locked down, I was back for 6 months. And we did the storyline where it was Mel's, Tamsin Outhwaite, she played Mel, her death. So I was there to take part in that storyline. And then also for Louise was leaving. So I was taking Louise away again. And then, so I quite like now that she dips in and out. Because for me, it's nice that I get to do some fabulous stuff when I go, and then I can leave, and then I'm free to do other bits and bobs. Because when you're there, you're not free to do other stuff. I mean,
I've heard this from a few people on the show.
You're there and you just do Eastenders, and it becomes like this all-consuming bubble. I mean, it's literally, that's all you know, and you almost think it's the only program that's being made in the world. It's kind of really, it's a bubble. It's a massive bubble, but it has to be like that in terms of it's a slick thing. It's a machine. And so you have to be all engaged with it, and it's all consuming. So I like that I go in, I can do an intense 6 months, I leave, and then I can do lots of other lovely jobs. It's, really, it's great. I think I've got the best of both worlds in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because I suppose, what we spoke to Jo Joyner as well, who does Tanya Brannan, and she obviously not doing EastEnders at the minute, but I think as well, there's got to be a reason for your character to go back, because it's like, especially with Tanya Brannan, it's like, why would you go back to somewhere that's so awful for your character, where your child's died and, and things like that, and you've had so many horrific moments.
Yeah, but I mean, see, it just depends on personally, professionally, what you're up to at that time. Yeah, and you do want to make sure that it's not a wasted opportunity, that they've written some good stuff and they've got a good storyline in mind for you in order to go back. It's not, you shouldn't just go back for the sake of going back, really. I think it's important. I mean, they're always really great to my character, and they do write some really lovely stuff. So I kind of knew what I was going back for, because when we had the conversation, I said, what's entailed her, what's going to happen. And so you do have the choice to go, actually, I don't want to come back to them,
Yeah.
So I like the way things are for me now there.
Yeah.
It's great. But it's been a long time. I mean, my very first, I was first there in 1998. It's now 2021, and it's never really gone out of my life. It's still a big part of my life. And at any point the phone can ring, they'll say, right, we want to back, would you like to play this storyline? So it's still, it's never really a chapter closed for me, EastEnders, really. It's not, it doesn't ever appear to be the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Was it just after the first time you left EastEnders, you did the X Factor, the singing, the sort of celebrity X Factor, was it? That was I remember that. Was it because I don't know if this is true or not, but didn't Sharon Osbourne accidentally reveal you were pregnant?
Yes.
Oh, was that a true story? Okay.
That's a very true story. Yes, she did. Because she had it was really early days, and I hadn't I think my mum might have known, and my mother-in-law, my husband's side of the family knew. And I don't know whether she was just privy to the information, or whether something had been, or whether I was in the makeup room and I'd said something about being pregnant. But I think she assumed that it was common knowledge then. And then on the show that day, she went, "Oh, and it's such great news, and you've got a little baby in your tummy and everything." And it's like, because it, live. And I just thought, my family don't know this. And it's just been revealed. I mean, it was quite a nice way for it to be exposed, really, I have to say.
Right.
It was a moment of like, whoa, and there's no rewinding and retaking that. That's out, it's out there. but it's quite, it's quite a lovely thing to say to Bess, really, now, about how her being in my tummy was revealed.
Yeah, her baby reveal was Sharon Osbourne.
Yeah, they are.
There you go. I mean, so when you did that, was that the same year they had Rebecca Lewis on and
Yeah,
James?
I mean, they'd only done it that year, and it was
Right.
never to be seen again.
Right.
I think they did it maybe a couple of years ago, I think,
Right.
with Martin Bashir, if I remember rightly. So literally, there's only ever been 2 series. The
Right.
one way back when that I did, and that one that was only, a couple of years ago. So that was with Rebecca Lewis and James Hewitt.
Yeah, because that was Sharon had that famous sort of headbutt with them in the show, wasn't it?
I think there was a bit of a spat going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that a bit awkward, like being backstage and knowing that was going on?
I think I don't know. All I know is, I mean, Sharon just doesn't mince her words. She doesn't like you, you'll know about it. It's and yeah, I mean, that was big news at the time, wasn't it? All that stuff. So it was a bit of a coup for the show, I suppose, to get those guys on. But it was fun. I mean, I think I got I think through the people fundraising, because it was done for charity. My charity got something like £100,000. So it was it was unbelievable how brilliant it was for the charity that I'm a patron of. So that was amazing, and that's that was the reason for doing it. I mean, I didn't think for a minute I would kind of stay till the end. That's for sure. And it was, as much as I was terrified, and I was totally terrified. You can imagine there's not, as much as I will do musical theatre, to stand up on stage and sing pop songs as me in front of Sharon Osbourne, Louis Walsh and Simon Cowell was just totally so far removed from what I do. So it was terrifying, but something I look back on now and I think, I'm so pleased I got, basically I got my balls out, really, and I did it, because it'd have been so easy just to go, no, I can't. And in fact, I did have that conversation with my husband at the time. I said, I don't think I can do it. I think I'd started rehearsals, and he just said, all right, phone him up and don't do it. I think he kind of tried to, double bluff me and said, don't do it then. I went, but I can't pull out. But there was a moment I just thought, I don't think I can do this. I really don't. And I remember having sound checks, and they were saying, right, what can you hear on stage? What do you need more of? Me thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. I can just hear me singing really badly. That's all I could hear. So it was technically quite a good learning curve as well, just kind of fall back and what I can hear in my earpiece, and levels, learning all about that. I had a newfound respect for live artists that have to stand up and do that sort of thing and sing live. I know it's tough.
Well, I mean, what was tougher, that one? Because you did the jungle as well. Was that a different? You did the jungle as well. I mean, what?
Yeah, I think I built myself up into such a frenzy about that, about being away from Bess and just kind of it being revolting. That once you're in the camp, it's in terms of horribleness. You just kind of get on with it, and you very quickly get on with being with nature, really, and about, you go to bed when the sun sets, you get up when the sun rises, the loveliest thing about it was you're totally out of the rat race. There's no phones, there's no anything, there's no this to do, there's no that to do. You just have to be there and engage with yourself and be with complete strangers. And I know there's revolting trials and things to do, but I think I'd made it such a nightmare in my head, thinking, oh my God, what are they going to throw at me? It's going to be awful. And after I jumped out of the plane was one of the first things I did. I just then, from that point on, I just had a different kind of attitude. And I thought, actually, I'm gonna enjoy this. I'm going to really throw myself into it and make the most out of it. And I did. I really quite enjoyed it. I missed my Bessie was only 3 at the time, or just turning 3. So it was the first time I'd ever been away from her. So I struggled with that a little bit, but actually it was a brilliant experience. It really was. If anybody got offered a chance, I would definitely say to them, you must do it.
Yeah. And I suppose, like, I mean, coming out of that, do you sort of have this, I suppose, like, acknowledgement that, wow, I can't believe I've done that? Because, like, because it's like, when you watch it, it seems like such a tough thing to do for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I was just pleased that I've never kind of thought of myself as being very outdoorsy or the sort of person that would like to put up a tent and camp. And so I was pleased that I adapted very well and just got on with life as we had to have it for the, I think I was only in there for about 2.5 weeks, but it was long enough.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate in the fact that I was in the camp with Katie Price the second time around when she went. And so
Right. Yeah.
she was the one that was being voted to do all of the nasty trials. So I didn't have to I didn't have to eat anything revolting, apart from things they would send in, the bush tucker, just the meals at the end of the night. I didn't have awful things to eat, but it was just there was a fun aspect about it, and it is quite bonding because you are having to kind of do things together, and adventure-y bits, and to jump out of a plane was brilliant. I would never have done something like that. So it's definitely something I'm pleased that I can tick off for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess going back to EastEnders, and we've always spoke about it to the people that have come on that have been on the show, is Barbara Windsor, and what a legend she was. And I can see you smiling. It happens every time I mention Barbara's name to someone from EastEnders, and they when I mentioned her name. I mean, what was it like just working with her? Because again, you were kind of during there sort of the peak Mitchell era of things, and peak Peggy Mitchell. I mean, what was it like working with her?
Barbara, looking back now, as much as I'd worked and I quite a bit before I got EastEnders, I was a jobbing actress. Barbara was the epitome of professionalism, and I can talk about her personally as well, but on a professional level, she was at the top of her game with she just set a standard, and I think and it does come from the top, and she was at the top, and she would never be late. She would never have any excuse not to know her lines. She would just be on it so much. And she was a brilliant role model. She really, really was. And I loved working with her. There was never that fear. You can work with some actors, you think, they're not going to know this. They're not going to know this. And, we're going to have to it's going to be tough to get through a scene. But there was always such a comfortability with Barbara that you could just trust. You could trust her to be on it, to know what she was doing, to help you out. So I loved having scenes with her. I just loved being in the Vic with her, totally. Because also equally in between takes, she could have a laugh. Her anecdotes were amazing. She liked a good old gossip. There's no denying that. And I was very fortunate, and she liked me. So I felt very looked after by her, totally and utterly looked after by her. And I just think she taught me a lot. I really do. I think she taught me a lot. And she certainly made her mark. And people did love her. People that didn't know her loved her. She really has a legacy, and people they've just got such warm, fond memories and feelings about her. But I just feel gifted that I can say I worked with her closely. I knew her. I knew her really quite well, and she spoilt me rotten, really. She took me under her wing, and I'll never ever forget it.
It's amazing. So many people have said that, like how lovely she was to them on set, and I guess like that sort of mentor figure, and they like having a gossip with her. Did you get to see her a little bit before she got very poorly, or?
No, I hadn't seen Barbara for quite some time, actually. Okay. No, I remember when I remember when she first had a fall or she was thrown off, I think, the seat in a black cab, and I remember her saying, I think she was struggling with her memory from when she banged her head, and I remember just saying, this knocks really, and I remember it's made me think about that a lot, since she's passed, just thinking. I remember her saying, I'm sure I'm struggling my lines. I'm sure it's from bloody hitting my head in that cab once. And that kind of came back to me again. I remember that story, after she died. And, I don't know if that was related or not, but I remember that happening to her. But all the time I worked with her, Barbara was always on it. She was, she could never, there was never a point when she didn't know her lines, and she was brilliant. But I think towards the end, that's why she kind of stepped down in the end. I think she was struggling to retain lines and to learn them. And we get that as we get older anyway. I mean, it takes me a lot longer to learn scripts now. I like to have them well in advance, and I think that just happens to all of us with age. But Yeah, and I'm sad that I didn't see Barbara before she went. Actually, I am
Mm. I guess
sad.
you've got lots of fond memories by the sounds of it as
Yeah, I
well.
have. I
Yeah.
have. I mean, we had the same size feet as well, so we'd share twos.
Oh, amazing.
We were like we were the same height. I'm only 5 foot, so yeah.
Great. So when you would, I guess, studying, theatre, drama school and things like that, I mean, lots of people that I spoke to, they seem to have different experiences of drama school. And I wonder what, like, your experience was. Was it, like, quite intense a bit? Some people say, like, after drama school, I felt like I needed therapy. But I don't know. I mean, I mean, what was it like for you? Was it okay?
Yeah, mine was different. I went to theatre school from the age of, well, like part-time classes. I went to Red Roofs, and then when I was turning 12, at the age you go to senior school, they opened up a day school.
Mhm.
So it was something that I was, and I'd had a couple of professional jobs at that point. I'd worked in the West End, did some musicals, and I just knew at the age of 12 I didn't want to go to an ordinary school at State Comp. I wanted to go to this theatre school that they were opening in Maidenhead. So my training was theatre school from the age of 12 to 17, really. And I have only the fondest memories of it. I adored every second of it. But mine was all singing and all dancing, and it was that time of Italia Conti and Barbara Speake and
Mhm.
Corona. There was theatre school Corona,
Yeah.
clearly. Yeah, so it was around about that time, and it was kind of trendy. It was that all of the kids from Fame was on the TV, and I wanted to be on top of the pops as a dancer, and it was just, that was mine. Mine wasn't so, I didn't go to postgrad. I didn't go to RAD or any drama schools then later on in life, and because I'd worked, more or less through the whole of my theatre school days from the age of 12 to 17. So for me, a natural progression was to finish at Red Roofs and then go out and fully go into the big wide world. And I just have no, I loved every single second of it. My parents split up during the time I was at theatre school, and my mum moved back to Birmingham, where she was from, with her parents, and my dad, kind of lived in Shepperton, and I went and lived with a family that was around the corner from my school, just so I could continue to go to Red Roofs. So it was my absolute lifeline. I don't know what I'd have done
Amazing.
actually without it, to be honest.
Amazing.
And my headmistress at the time, she was my inspiration. She believed in me, and she just kind of had faith in me, and I just, and because of her, it's just something I always knew I wanted to do, and that was my path. There was never any question about I was going to do something else, really.
Mhm.
So from a very early age, even my family are not in the business, and it's not like it's come from anywhere else. It was just something I was born with. I think it's just a bug I had in me, and my headmistress, and she was my agent at the time, that she was a theatrical child agent, and she just kind of grew that seed, I
Mhm.
suppose.
And do your kids sort of are following in your footsteps at all with the performing, or
I
not
don't,
really
I
then?
don't know whether they can help but not. I mean, just in terms of, I mean, it's all I know.
Mhm.
You know, Betty sings constantly, but I'm convinced that's because she was a baby in my tummy when I did X Factor that I did
Right.
it. I'm convinced that she sings because there was just music the time. But yeah, so Betty's more musical. She's a pianist, and she reads music. That was nothing I ever learned to do. With Rosie, yeah, I don't know. I'm the jury's out at the moment with her. She's too young. I try not to label. I just don't want to kind of, it's so easy. I always say to my kids, it's so easy for teachers even to go, oh, your mum was like, so you'll obviously go into that line of work. And so I want to go, no. You make your own choices. I can help you if that's what you choose, but don't do it just because I did it, you
Mhm.
know. But Bessie is musical, so I see that being more of a path, but as opposed to it being acting like I went into. But she could easily go down the music route. I don't know in what way, but I kind of see music being something that she will end up doing, which would be lovely.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, you spoke earlier about sort of, private investigators and all that sort of following you. And I wonder, I mean, one news story that's made me, and I'm surprised how angry, I mean, there's lots of sad stories and things that can make you angry, but a story that's made me surprisingly angry, or as horrific as it is the Sarah Everard story.
Mm.
And I wasn't, obviously we're all angry, but I was surprised how angry I was by the story, because I guess of the situation, the I say person used loosely, that committed the crime was, a police officer. I just want to, because you talk about private investigators and stuff like that, and I guess have there been times where you've had to walk around on your own and you felt unsafe, perhaps?
Yeah. I mean, you hear that story. You do pretend to make a phone call. I mean, that's my experience of walking home. It doesn't even have to be particularly in the dark. If I just think I'm going to walk past somebody that you get a funny vibe from, that might be staring a bit too long or something, I will literally always pretend to make a phone call. I will increase my pace, and do you know what's? I mean, it makes me totally angry about the way in which that all came about with that revolting man. Because do you know what's upsetting is that as law-abiding citizens, and if somebody says that they're a police officer and you've done something wrong, and they would like to arrest you and take you to the station for questioning, I would say, oh, okay, and I would have got into the car. And I know that I would have done exactly the same as a law-abiding person. So what makes me cross is they say, that the tips on how to not, how to be safe is to kind of go and run and call a bus driver.
Yeah.
We are taught to be respectful of the police, and I would have said, oh, okay, and I would honestly have almost handed myself in and got in the back of the car. So, so the conversation goes on now to my girls, and I've now had to say to Bessie, please, and it's a conversation I'm having with myself at the same time. If there is only one policeman that is saying these things, you have to be brave enough to say, I'm really sorry, but you need to get somebody else here to just to kind of back up what you're saying. And that takes real strength to do that. And that's my fear, that you don't want to ever to be seen to going against the law or to be disrespectful of somebody in a position of authority. That I've always taught my kids, if you're in trouble, you go and find a policeman or a policewoman, you go and find, and it goes against all of that. And that's so scary. And as a mother of two girls, and as I say, and to myself, I want to go, Luce, you must have this conversation with yourself. If a single police, being stopped in my car, can I say, if a policeman says, and he's on his own, you're to get in the back of the car, am I allowed to go, no, sorry, I'm not. No, I'm not getting in the back of the car. So it's a conversation that we are now having in our house as a result of that tragic death. And one I wish we weren't having to have, because it goes against everything that I've been, I was taught as a girl myself, as a little girl, about how to treat and who to go to in times of need. And I was saying to my husband, I just know for a fact, if he'd have said to me, here's my card, you are out, you are breaking lockdown rules, get in the car, I'd have done it. And I think I'm savvy, and I think I can stand up for myself. I would have done it. I would have got in that car. I know for a fact. And that's what is terrifying. The abuse of power is terrifying.
And it was,
I'm glad that it makes you angry, too. I mean, it's a bad light on men. It's a bad light on the police. It's just, and it goes against everything, as I say, that we've been taught as decent human beings about going against what a police officer says to you.
It was more like, I mean, as a guy, I'm 6'4". I'll never understand what it's like to be scared walking by myself in London. But I was seeing so many people on social media and stuff saying I've been that person that has felt vulnerable and worried about someone that's been a bit close to me in London. I was surprised how many people spoke out and said that this isn't like a one-off. I mean, it's it's to end so horrifically is a unique situation, but for someone to be in that situation of being approached by a man is so normal for so many people.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I remember, and it is normal, and I think if I had the conversation with every single one of my girlfriends, they would say they've had a situation where they've had to pretend to be doing something, or they've had to kind of, or they felt vulnerable or scared, and not knowing exactly what you should do, are then stopping and maybe looking at it in a shop window. I mean, you just come up with all these things. My fear is I'm talking Nadia on the phone, and then my phone starts to ring, and then they know then that I'm lying, and that's going to make them cross. You have all these conversations in your head that, oh my goodness, now they're going to know that I think that they are some, and then you're upsetting somebody that might not be somebody that's going to do something bad to you. So then you're worried about, it's just a whole level of this worry and yeah, so it's horrible. I remember when I lived in a flat in Highgate when I very first moved to London, and I'd say it was probably back in about 91, 92, and I was renting a flat with a friend of mine on a ground floor flat, and I remember there being a flasher that would come past my window in the evening, and it was a regular occurrence. And it's only now that listening to this, because Sarah Everard, that you hear that behavior can turn into something else. That is something else in the making. We were never taught that. We never knew that. We just thought, oh, silly old sod, arc it in, getting his bits out. That's how we were taught to kind of just look at something now. So it has opened up a very, a good discussion to have now. And they're saying, if that kind of stuff happens, you must be reporting that, because this could potentially be stopping somebody else to go on and that's going to commit further and more serious crimes. And I never knew that. So we are being made more aware now about what this kind of behavior is and what it means. Which is it's all interesting, and it can only be for the better good, really. So if we've learned something from this tragic death, and I'm pleased I'm having this conversation with my daughter that I might not have done until she came home and have said to me, "Oh, Mum, that just happened to me." So now I'm having that before something like that happens. I'm arming her as such with the information.
Absolutely. Well, I nearly called you Lisa then. Lucy, it's been absolutely. It's been. It's so lovely talking to you today. Obviously, on the Shapes of Stories, the podcast, we always talk about a story that means something to us, a special story that means something to us, whether it be a childhood book, whether it be a book or someone's personal story or a story that's happened to you. So is there like a story that you hold special to your heart?
I don't know about a story, but when I thought about this, I referenced her earlier on, but there was a woman, my headmistress called June Rose, who ran Red Roof Theatre School. I try and think of, other people that have had such an influence in my life, that have shaped my life. And she has to be the main story, really, the main person that kind of comes from the name that flashes up in my head. If ever I had to say who is responsible for, who guided you, and I mean, this woman is 90 years of age now, and she's still, going strong for her age, but she created a path for me, totally and utterly. She had such belief in me, and she enabled me to kind of look at this industry as something that was totally achievable and totally doable, and not something that was way out of my realms or my reach, and made it kind of normal for me to think, oh yeah, that's my job, that's what I'm going to do, because this woman had kind of imprinted such a belief on me that it was never in question that that's always what I was going to do. And even in dark days when things are quiet and when you don't work, I believe because of what she gave me, my doubt never wavers. My ambition to go on never wavers, and I truly believe I hold her responsible and blamable for still being in this business now, as yucky as it can be at times. But she shaped my life totally and utterly, with her belief.
Brilliant. Absolutely amazing. Well, Lucy, it's been absolutely grand talking to you today, and I look forward to seeing.
Oh, I banged on a bit, haven't I? I'm sick of sound my own voice.
No, people got to come and see you in Panto. Where is it that you are this year?
I'm in Rickmansworth, and I'm playing Fairy Godmother.
Brilliant.
The year before we went into lockdown, I played Fairy Godmother. The first time I've ever done it. I normally play. It shows my age, really, now, means I'm getting old. But yes, I love her. Brilliant. She's fun. She's a quirky Fairy Godmother, and in fact I channel Barbara Windsor a little bit, I think, in it.
I might have to pop along now. I might have to pop along and see you in action now.
Okay. Fabulous. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too.